Thanks for joining us inside the Dancer's Studio, where we bring listeners like you closer to the creative process. Inside the Dancer's Studio is a program of the National Center for Choreography at the University of Akron as part of our Ideas in Motion initiative, and was recorded in front of a live audience on the university campus. Today, we join Christy Bolingbroke, our Executive Artistic Director, in conversation with Samantha Speis of Urban Bush Women.
Sam, how and when did you know you wanted to be a choreographer? Is there a moment?
This is interesting because I don't think there was a moment that I said to myself or I thought, oh, I'm going to be a choreographer. I've always been creating, and so that was a path that just I inherently took. And I think there is the choice and there was the choice and the locating of saying, I want to give more attention to this, but I never said to myself, I want to be a choreographer. I always said I want to be creating, and that didn't necessarily mean creating work. It just meant creating, and in improvisational context. And I think that feels more of my base, is improvisation, and through improvisation, the actual structuring and making it was birthed.
Do you create in other genres or forms other than dance?
Oh, that's interesting. No.
Okay. Just helping me define the idea of always creating.
Yeah, I mean, I think. Well, let me back up, because if we're thinking outside of the art world, yes, I'm an organizer, so I create space for people.
Yes.
I create, I'm a mother of two. I create space for my children to explore, to investigate, to be, whole in who they are, to develop in holistic ways. So yes, I do. I want to retract that.
The intention of creation, not just in the studio. Yeah, that's great, because you're a person too.
Exactly.
Yes. So, but when you are making a dance work, where do you start? What inspires you?
It could be something that rises to the surface, something that I'm interested in right now. There is this inspiration. There is this urgency to create around healing, to create around restoration, and what that means. I'm really drawn to water right now, and so that is, that's just like the spark. And then my body is a really important aspect of something coming to me. I'll go in the studio or I'll go somewhere. It doesn't always have to be in the studio. It can be outside. It can be in my home. And I'll just allow myself to speak through my body, to say what it needs to say, and then I'll go back and look. And there are things that come to me. There are ideas, there are concepts that come to me through experiencing, through movement, and then watching and observing myself. So that is a really important, and I'm doing this because I've been talking a lot about my body being a map, and locating, sometimes there are areas that rise of the map that feel like, okay, you need to speak to this now, or you need to create around this now, and which is like that water aspect is like rising, you know, to the top, which is in the what I call the womb space. So this is an area that's been conjuring ideas and thoughts and things of that nature that are saying, oh, this is what you should be giving your energy to right now.
The question was posed as almost like that you would be responding to or taking inspiration from something, and you didn't use this verb, but I wanted to float it by you. When you talk about what you need to speak to, I'm also struck that you may be also listening to your body.
Absolutely.
Which might be quieter when people think about inspiration being this huge event, but actually maybe carving out time or finding space that you can kind of have a dialogue, both hearing and talking to your body or different elements, the water. I love that idea. Nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is also a huge part of my practice is listening, and like the deep to the nitty gritty, like zero listening, so that there's the availability for the ingesting or taking in of what also lives that I may not actually be able to locate.
But you can feel.
But I can feel it, yeah.
How would you characterize your choreographic relationship to sound? Okay. So I'm going to take this back to, I mentioned this to the students the other day as just an example. My mother, and this is just one example, but my mother, she would clean in the middle of the night on a Saturday or a Sunday. And I recall her playing music, like blasting music actually. And we would just, I would help because I like to clean, and from a very young age. And I recall just running around the house, dancing around, cleaning, but I recall that. And so there's something about sound, not just being like from an instrument necessarily, but the sound of like the broom or the sound of my mother saying, my parents used to call me Mantha. So, Mantha, go get, such and such, or, so and so. And so those sounds are things that, again, have been stored and archived in my body. I also, I'm from Washington, D.C., and there is a very specific genre of music, go-go. And so that has also been a huge part of like how rhythm lives inside of me, and then how that also translates to the body. So I think that, and then that lineage of movement, I also brought up rolling down hills, and so what did that sound like and what did that feel like? The grass against my body and the as I moved down. So I think of sound as being something that has informed in the tiniest ways. And I think about like the detail, when I'm working in an internal place or when I'm working in a more external place, what those sounds conjure up, what they bring up, what the memories of those sounds bring up for me, and then what's already there, that I can't always explain, but I know that it's in my body and it lives in my body, and then it speaks through my body. So
it's interesting. And then just, being able to have different experiences where that builds my palette of listening. A few years ago, myself and Jawale Zahler choreographed a work, Walking with Train, and that process was a 3-year making process that included research, and that some of that research included this deep listening of different sounds, different artists, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, and then
the train references Coltrane's music.
Coltrane, yes. and just really trying to also be inside of that listening in a way where we're not trying to emulate, but we're trying to find ourselves or find some aspect of whatever it is that we're experiencing in that work that allows us again to be like full, and then to contribute to it. So
what it strikes as an ongoing theme is this idea of dialogue, and sometimes that's not a direct dialogue. Sometimes it is a call and response, and I've seen that in Urban Bush Women performances. Calling each other out, working directly with a drummer, and you can see. I mean, there's a synergy. One isn't necessarily leading the other, and that is a nuanced approach. There's a reason that the question didn't ask about your relationship to music, because a lot of times in choreography there's an assumption that music, like each song just has a dance locked up inside of it, and the choreographer just comes in and turns the right key to unlock it from that song, and that's not the reality. So I appreciate how you've also it brought in the spirit of environment and that sort of listening, and how sounds are in dialogue with each other the same way dancers might be too, and then the meta versus in the meta, dancers in dialogue with the sounds. So, one tactical question: how do you name a dance work?
Oh, I
know.
Naming dance works. Oh, it's the most difficult part. I'm awful. I'm terrible at naming dance works, and I'm thinking about earlier works that I've created and the number of times that the name has changed, and I think it's connected to the evolution and the understanding of the work, and what it is that I'm creating.
Or sometimes when they need the title, you're not done making it yet.
Yes, that happens all the time. I'm like, oh, please, no, I don't want to name this. I don't want to label it.
Right.
So that is very difficult, and it's something that I grapple with often, because then what I've had to work myself out of is that this isn't what it is. It doesn't have to be this. So yes, for the sake of that grant, give it this title and know that isn't contingent upon what you actually create. And so I've started letting go of naming, and then allowing the work to manifest and become, and then if it has to shift, it shifts. So every process of titling the work is very different, and there is no approach to it. I think the approach is let go and let the work speak to you and speak for itself, and then when that title comes, it comes.
There are some choreographers who will also just say, well, the name of the music is this, so I'm going to call the dance that too. Which I mean, that in itself is a choice, but almost to say, like, I'm not going to fight it. Why do we need multiple names out there?
Right.
So you talked about working your way just through the naming process. In the process of making, if you find yourself in a creative rut, how do you get out of it? How do you continue to move forward?
Yeah, because There, you have to. For me, it's pausing, like just taking a moment to pause. And working under right now, mostly working under the umbrella of creating under Urban Bush Women. And so there's that. Oh, you have this performance coming up. Oh, this premiere is happening. So there is that forward progression that has to happen.
The sun's going to come up the next day.
Exactly. And the approach of just, it's okay. Just pause for a moment. Breathe into it. Maybe we don't go into rehearsal today. Maybe we do a half a day. Maybe we just reflect. Maybe there's information in sitting around and talking. Maybe there's information in taking a nap. And then there are the times when you keep pushing because you have to, and trusting that there will be something there. And if there isn't, I think this is another thing that I don't lock myself. I try not to. I make a huge effort not to lock myself into, although it has to be done now, that it isn't done. It isn't the product. I feel like
you can go back.
You can go back, and I often in my work, once it has made a premiere or it's been put out into the world, that is not the end. It's not the completed work. It takes years for it to get to a place where I feel like, oh, that's it. And so I default to that. I lean into that and know that there are times when you just have to push through. I have to push through, and maybe it's not focusing on this section today. Maybe it's going and focusing on this. Maybe it's starting from the end of the work or whatever, is the end of the work for that moment and working on that. So pulling out pieces and working from there. I'm
struck when you said it can take years. Because Urban Bush Women just performed a piece originally premiered in the 80s. I don't know what I've been told, but if I dance, I won't grow old. And it felt just as fresh and relevant today. And so that idea that sometimes maybe it's not about the steps, but the structure that you're choreographing, so that there still can be that evolution inside of it, because the dancers are going to be different.
Absolutely.
Right? From those that originally premiere a piece, sometimes between fall and spring, sometimes between two decades. So how are you creating something that will always evolve more rhetorically? Because I want to get to maybe...
I want to say one more thing.
Please.
And also, works may show up as different works. So, you may have I might have an idea of this and work on this for a certain amount of time and then drop it and then create this. But then some down the line, this makes sense with this, or I go back to that. So
it's all related.
Yeah.
And the performances are just sort of an interruption in between the process. Right. Yeah. I wanted to ask, what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received, particularly just life or in navigating a creative career that you might want to share?
Oh, that is difficult.
Or make some up on the spot.
Yes. I'm going back. Let me see.
Yeah.
Going back.
We're conjuring all the ancestors and mentors information.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Well, one thing that is on the top that Jawole, and I'm not going to say it verbatim, but there's one thing that Jawole shares often is if you're not on the edge of failure, you're not taking a risk. And that has been really important because, there are the ideas of what failure is. And I speak about this often in class. It's like, go on ahead and fall off your leg, or, because there is the information is there. And if you never do that, then you never know, you're never in the know of, or the possibility of. And so, being able to just be on the precipice of whatever, feels uncomfortable or feels like, oh, I won't survive that. Also feels exciting when you leap into it. Yeah. So that, and then there's something that Sharon Bridgeforth said, and I have it written down, so I can't remember, but she said something, often the stories that you're afraid to share are the stories you should be telling. Sharon Bridgeforth just said that a few days ago when I was with her. The stories that you're often afraid to share are the stories that you should be telling.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent. We have maybe time for one or two more questions. I want to make sure not to leave those in the room. You don't even have to mic up. I'll repeat the question for the purpose of documentation. I have more questions. Believe me, we didn't get to them all. But y'all have been such a great audience too. Yes, please.
I'm really drawn to this idea of the body as a sort of living archive and how you're able to sort of excavate those memories in your work. And so I'm curious how your process is translating that onto other bodies and other archives.
Yes, that's what I'm working on here, because I've noticed that I've been doing this work with myself and on myself for years, since I've, for years. And I'm in the research and the discovery of how to do that. Because what's important to me isn't that people take on the style of what I'm doing, but that they are breathing life into what is, being shared with them in a way that is most truthful for them. And so I'm really interested in what a person is bringing into it, just as much as what I'm sharing with them, or what they're experiencing from me. So I'm in that research right now of how do you share that? Because we all have the storage and the memories and the archiving in our bodies. It's a matter of how do we get to that? How do we access that if we're not? Or how are we aware of it? Are we aware of it? And so it's understanding that first. And it took me, I was speaking to a colleague of mine the other day, and I was tracking my formal dance lineage and thinking, oh yeah, I picked that up, that is what, propels me into this, and then this propels me into this, and just seeing the circularity of that lineage, and then I can go back and track the lineage of being a child, or so it's all important, and it's something that I'm dedicated to understanding more, so that folks can also be in that understanding and sharing as well.
Well, and as part of your work this week, you get a shout out.
Yes.
Bernaldra Williams came with you as an additional observer and thought partner to be able to acknowledge that. Because I think sometimes choreographers, you're trying to make the thing, you're trying to coach the thing, you're trying to lead, and among all of these different skills. And so to have someone, I so appreciate that in coming into this, you were like, wait, this is an opportunity. This is part of the work, and making this experience work for you.
Thank you for that. Yes, it's really important.
Thanks, Bernaldra.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Last one? I'll take the last one then. In accepting this invitation, I'm curious, what the term 21st century dance practices means to you, your interpretation of that. I mean, obviously, we felt that in being able to welcome you in this week, and thank you again so much for joining us, that it's following instinct as well as our observations in the field, things that are sort of bucking the trend of codified techniques of the 20th century. I'm vamping for you to make your own definition.
Yeah. So going back to what I was saying about lineage, I think that something that I value is what came before. And so with that understanding of what came before and what has been an influence, whether I name it or other makers name it, there is that influence. And so I think with that, it's like, what are we doing with what has been given to us, what has been extended to us? Is it trying to make it better or revamping it? Or I think what, as a maker, I am thinking of it as dreaming into what can be for the next. So recognizing that this has been, created and established and did wonderful things, and now what am I doing in the field that is going to allow for that dreaming of the next to occur and to be like expansive in that dreaming inside of that. So
to dreaming to the next.
Yes.
Samantha Speis, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone.
Thank you.
Inside the Dancers Studio Lunchtime Talk Series is supported by NCCAkron, the University of Akron, the University of Akron Foundation, and the Mary Schiller Myers Lecture Series in the Arts. Our podcast program is produced by Jennifer Edwards. Ellis Rovin is our composer and editor. Transcription by Madeline Greenberg. Theme music by Flaco Torres. Cover art by Micah Krause. And Julian Curett and Kat Wentz are our artist coordinators. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we encourage you to subscribe on your favorite podcast streaming platform by searching Inside the Dancers Studio. Thank you for listening, and stay curious.